Cracking the PM interview. I hated that book, by the way.
Can you help break down for us how AIPM specific roles are different from general product management?
Referrals are overrated, highly overrated. Today, everyone has a referral, and I have spoken with recruiters also, and
I'm Naman Pandey, and in this episode, featured not expert is Aman Goyal. Aman is an incoming AI product manager at the Trade Desk, a role that is joining after completing his master's in information systems from Carnegie Mellon University.
I sent 3,000 connection requests, and only 1,000 actually accepted. I could only get 60 people on a coffee chat with me and get my resume reviewed with only 30 people.
How did you go about formatting / tailoring your resume to reflect best of both worlds that you had been a part of?
He has this entire community where senior product managers in Microsoft are effectively doing mock interview with you. So totally, I sat in more than 200 mock interviews through my 2 semesters journey.
In this episode, we explore the nuances of the AI product manager role, the newest kid on the product manager block. Aman shares some incredible resources on how to switch from a technical background to a career in product. And then we focus specifically around the AI product manager role. Do AIPM roles also have behavioral interviews?
Everyone starts mock interviews once they get an email from the recruiter saying that, hey, you're shortlisted.
How would you explain primary key in SQL to a 5-year-old?
There are all these links in my resource document in the description.
A good interview experience boils down to how comfortable you can make the interviewer feel.
If you do not have any solid experience around machine learning or building model, it's very
In keeping with that theme of learning from somebody that's just 2 steps ahead of us instead of an expert, my goal is to shine a light on this new and upcoming field and how you can future-proof yourself by starting now. This is the Ready Set Do podcast, and to support it, subscribe on YouTube and all your favorite podcast apps. There are some more links in the description for more effective ways to support me. And now, without any further ado, my friends, here's Aman. Welcome to the Ready Set Do podcast, where we learn from journeys of not experts who are just 2 steps ahead of us. Aman, welcome.
Hey, come on. Thank you so much for inviting me.
So glad to be talking to you. Excited to jump off the deep end here a little bit and kind of put you on the spot, if I'm being honest. And as is now tradition on the podcast, I'd like to begin with, what is your controversial opinion / hot take around the AIPM sphere of things when it comes to it can be industry, it can be academia, it can be career-wise. But what is your controversial take around this particular subject that we're going to be talking about?
I think it might replace APMs and PM interns and all the junior PM roles, according to my understanding. Because when I reflect what work I did back as a PM intern last year, and because I speak to a lot of other PM interns and PMs, a lot of the work can actually be done. What I did in 12 weeks within 1 week using an AI agent. So I feel
Oh, wow.
yeah, I mean, and that those tools were not present back in May when I started my internship, but now I think in the agentic AI era, it's being made possible. But I feel when it comes to decisioning and when it comes to higher insights from director of product or senior product managers, those will still be very valuable because those will be the people deciding the vision of the product, but actually doing the grunt work like maybe making PRDs or aligning with software engineers and
Yeah.
product designers. I think we might not be very far away from that point when people when companies completely stop hiring for junior PM roles, maybe similar to software. But I initially thought PM would be more unstructured, so more difficult to replace. But now I'm believing that lesser and lesser. So I'm more optimistic in that the idea that it might replace initially all the junior roles. So it's like a wake up call for all of us who are in this industry to upscale and try to be more creative and be more realistic.
That's definitely a hotter take than I was expecting. First of all, let me share that. But no, what you're saying makes sense. It makes total sense on the outset. That is something that I have considered, and has just fundamentally it kind of makes sense to think that. But the thing that caught my attention a little bit was what you said around even EPM roles being potentially replaced. And by EPM, I'm assuming you meant engineering product managers, right? To be clear. Yeah. So can you share a little bit more light on that? Because that I felt like was, at least for the moment, at least momentarily, safer compared to the others. The junior stuff for sure, yeah, that's probably already gone if you're being honest. But wouldn't the engineering stuff be a little bit more trickier, wouldn't you say?
Yes. So I think uh, so. My role at my company was around technical product management or engineering product management, and it was a lot on working with the ML ops team and working with the AI research team as well. So
Mm.
I think what I found there was that things like uh, communicating technical requirements, understanding the code base, sometimes doing data analysis. All these, I think, as software agents like Google AI Studio is doing a pretty good job. Then we have visual. Then we have different tools which are actually coming up. I feel as that part gets more and more easy, probably in a year or two, it will be easy for the TPMs and the PPM interns to be replaced because ultimately, data analysis tasks, building prototype. I mean, today, as a PM, you can also create a prototype instead of just waiting for your software engineer to come up with some version or maybe a product designer. So maybe instead of a PM, the team probably would prefer like a virtual PM who has all these tools in their hands of creating mock-ups. So maybe you might see some influence in the designing world already, like how Figma had launched last year so many features. So slowly, I think ultimately you want to reduce the communication bandwidth uh, between different teams, and PM essentially does that. So probably with the increase in technical uh, tools and all the AI agents around that, in 1 or 2 years, I feel it might be more possible. But yes, in today's world, it's not completely possible to replace like a very hard and core technical PM of maybe a junior version also. But in future, definitely should be so.
That makes sense. Yeah, especially around deep research coming out now. I don't know if you've had the chance to play with that. I've been looking forward to doing that. I haven't yet.
Okay.
But from what I'm seeing, it's just completely cracked. Like it we're not just even talking product managers here, we're talking, researchers, we're talking basically any analyst role, if you think about it, pretty much, which is such a wide umbrella already. And
Mm.
it's here now. Like this is not even something which is in the future, but we'll save the doomsdaying a little bit towards the end. I want to kind of jump
Mm.
next into, just for our listeners, can you provide a little bit of context around your experiences, your journey a little bit? Maybe you can start with your bachelor's and then kind of how you weaved through the years to get to the AIPM role that you are currently working and what that was like.
Sure. Yeah. I think I started my journey as an undergrad in computer science from NIT Kurukshetra in India. And uh, immediately I started feeling pretty fascinated by AI. And AI was not even really like a big thing in 2017, 2018. It was more like a very fancy world of, all those, I don't know if you remember, but OpenAI was releasing all those playground videos of hide and seek and a lot of the virtual environments being released that time, and nothing actually in a real person, right?
It was
So,
also very gate kept in terms of the tech itself.
yeah,
It felt very inaccessible where you needed
right,
just a straight up, at least minimum a master's degree to even be able to think about how to
right.
do all of that. So yeah, definitely agree. Yeah. But sorry,
Exactly,
continue.
and that's where I actually thought, because I think initially the companies were interested in only hiring like master's level or PhD level research, uh, 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 even without research, even technical ML roles, uh, uh, and I think what I understood was that going very solid in ML research was something which very less people were doing back then, because everyone was very fascinated towards the STE jobs, and they were honestly, they were also the highest paying jobs back in India that time. So my university had only STE roles in the placements in India, so I never sat for placements, and I had to really like cold message or cold mail my way to different research opportunities at IIIT Hyderabad, at Carnegie Mellon University, at Michigan University, at later at Intel as well. So so years went by, and I think in in a year or two, I started uh, like for the initial first year, I did mostly university research. So I used to work in these labs, do like hardcore research on computer vision and deep learning. And the most, I think, interesting project which I worked during my research time there was building this model which could detect triple riding and helmet violations on Indian roads. Yeah. So I think that was a huge problem faced by the Telangana government, which is one of the state governments here in India. And three people or four people stacked together in a bike or in a two-wheeler in India, uh, it was a problem which was never really solved completely because it was very difficult for an AI model, if you back then, for an object detection model to detect so closely stacked bodies, and in India it could be even five or six. So I worked on in a on
And some animals sometimes.
yeah, exactly. Animals, babies. There's so many wild possibilities to. So we worked for a year. I worked there, and I was able to actually get a paper and a patent out of it. Uh,
So that's awesome.
that
That's so
that
cool.
was initially, and then I worked at Intel for almost a year before moving to the US. So that was my journey before masters, and now through when I came to masters, right, like before when I got accepted rather, already had some background of AI research. I already had been working in ML, and I honestly found it a bit monotonous, the entire process, because it was ultimately cleaning the data set, training the model, evaluating the model. So there were already three or four parts of the process which were repeated in either Intel or either be it Triple IP Hyderabad or CME or wherever research I did. So when I got accepted, I I started thinking of what different roles could I work where I could actually explore the entrepreneurial or the business side and not just be pigeonholed into the technical side. And that's where I discovered product management and I actually love talking to people and communicating. So I thought that maybe this is a role which could actually help me do that and get paid for that. So why not do that? So that's where I started my quest to product management.
So just to clarify, your master's degree was in what again? Sorry.
It was an information systems management. So it was more of a technical and a business degree, and it was not like a complete technical degree like an MSCS. That was a
I
conscious
see.
decision. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. And the reason I ask is I studied engineering management, which, from what I understand, is like fairly analogous. I don't know if you've had a
Yeah.
different,
It,
right? It's kind of the same concept, at least. So, yeah, I mean, that's interesting. And so, I guess what I'm curious about next is you have all of this research background, but then you realize that actually that's not as fun for you. So, you don't, want to do that as much anymore. And then you try to pivot a little bit more into somewhat of a more functional field, it sounded like. So, now once you came out of that master's degree, what was your process or what was your experience around showcasing all of this on a piece of paper, which is your resume, right? Because all of that story that you just said makes perfect sense to me because you were able to narrate that to me. Now, you can't do that when you have a piece of paper to represent you. So, how did you go about, you know, formatting slash tailoring your resume to reflect the best of both worlds that you had been a part of at some point or the other in the past?
or yeah, I think that's a great question, man. So I think what I initially understood was uh, I spoke to before even making the decision of transitioning to product management at Intel itself. Just before 2-3 months of joining masters, when I was in my notice period at Intel, I was trying my best to actually speak to as many product managers across the globe at Intel, right? So just to understand, what does a product manager do, right? What are the day-to-day functionalities? Because this is a huge decision actually. If you see, going from ML engineer to product manager, it's very different, and
Yeah.
the market is very bad here in US. So you don't want to go after the wrong thing and later realize that you want to take a U-turn. So in
And what
order,
year was this? Sorry, what year
it
was
was
this?
so yeah, it was 2023. So just before I started my master's in August, I was doing a lot of research on product management in on March, April. So 3, 4 months before going to the US to understand, whether it's even for me or it's just one of those things where I just want to do something else because I hate or I feel bored of my current space in ML.
It's funny that while you're doing that, probably after getting your admission already, that part
Yeah.
a little interesting to me.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I got admitted in like March, and then
yeah,
I I was like, I don't want to do the same thing again.
right, right.
But how do you know what the new thing is? By talking to the people who are already excelling in that. So that's what I
Exactly.
did. I did a lot of projects as well during that time to understand, if I was a product manager, this is how I would break down a product like Instagram. This is how I would break down a product like Uber or whatever it was, right? And
Mm.
then I was fully sure by June or July. So it took me 3, 4 months that I have to go to product management. Now, the question then was how to cater that because my past 3, 4 years work has been completely technical.
Exactly.
All the like each and every word in my resume is they are technical. It has matrix like accuracy, and it has nothing about revenue and nothing about adoption, engagement,
Yeah.
daily IO usage.
Design, UX, yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I had never even spoken to a product manager because I had worked in core research teams at Intel and all the labs, right? So I was we were just a bunch of research scientists working together and no communication with product manager during my work, right? So, but with all the interactions I had had and with all the homework I did, I understood that I understood a little bit what does a PM's mindset look like. So what I thought was
Got it.
I took my current resume, all the technical job and everything, and each and every line or each and every experience, I started thinking, what if I gave this to my product manager? What would how would this work help my product manager? Right? What matrix
Got
of the product would it move or shift for my product manager? For example, at Intel, I worked on the OpenVino library, which is their open source library, and it's widely used around the world. And I had pushed the model of object detection to that with a very high accuracy. So I thought that if I gave this to my product manager, right, what would it look like? It would probably be that that more and more engineers are adopting to this new library, more and more research scientists are using this in their new products, right? So I started adding matrix around it, right? And basically I became AIPM in my head, uh, and before I actually became one. And that's how I really transitioned my resume, right? I read a lot of job descriptions of product management, understood what are the keywords, what are the matrix, right? And I tried to find a perfect marriage between my past experience and my required experience.
That's a really helpful call out. One quick question on that. When you said product matrix, for some of us that aren't exactly sure what that entails, can you please share what that is exactly? Like, what are the things in the product matrix?
Sure, yeah. So there are like around 6 phases of any product. And for example, adoption is one phase, right?
I saw, okay.
So
Got it.
all the adoption, engagement, retention, revenue, referral, right?
And then maintenance, right? Probably the last one is just where you maintain it kind of perpetually forever. Or am I making that?
Yeah, I think so. A lot of products like Instagram, they measure it by engagement, like daily active usage, monthly active usage. So they
Hmm.
try to understand how their engagement has gone up, or is it the same or not. So those are like some of the metrics there uh,
Hmm.
around product for each phase, I would say. So for example, in adoption, it is more about signups and logins and people who exited after coming to the login page. So all these metrics around the product are probably all the metrics which are there on the job description as well.
Okay, interesting. So you shared how you went about the resume fixing. Now I'm next curious about because you came from a technical background and were all of this was new to you. How did you go about with the actual upskilling? So were you doing like online courses and certifications? And or maybe you were relying on CMU with the MIS course. How did you actually learn these skills that you identified off of the job descriptions, etc., that you went?
Sure. I think I think I worked extremely hard before coming to the US, because I had actually spoken to a lot of seniors within my batch, and they all told me that it's that only two or three of the entire batch of 200 people, 250 people are getting internships in product management. So you have to be that good to actually, or that prepared rather to actually get, not just get interviews, but crack interviews. No, I think what I did was I joined this fellowship in India called the Next League Fellowship, and it was a 12-week fellowship, I think, if I'm not wrong. And in that, I was actually constantly connected with a lot of these product leaders, and they kind of had these weekly assignments. So for example, I mentioned the product tear downs, right? So every week I used to do a product tear down on one of their products, like Uber, or it could be Amazon or XYZ, any product. Then we used to also have mock interview preps, right? So the mentors every week used to explain us what the different kinds of interviews look like in product management, how to ace them, etc., etc. Right. So
So when you say a product tear down, sorry, can you go over what that tear down looks like? What exactly are you tearing down when you do that?
sure, sure. So so in order to tear down like a product like Instagram or Uber, there are like number of products within Uber, right? For example, there is the rider side, there is the driver side. There are different products within these product. For example, Instagram has stories, which is a completely different product from the normal posts. Reels is a completely different product, right?
Right.
Now,
Right.
within that, you try to choose one small segment or one small feature. For example, if you want to tear down just the onboarding of Uber users, so what does the entire onboarding process of Uber app looks like, right? So what do you do is then you go to the Uber app, you you try to sign in as a fresh user, right? And you try to effectively understand how they are trying to reduce friction for you, or maybe increase friction for you, to ensure that only the most relevant users are joining. And then you try to understand what are the metrics around, signing up, what are the metrics around adoption, activation, right? As we briefly mentioned
Yep.
before. So you try to capture this entire experience of one segment, and that is, and you create it in form of a deck, right?
Okay.
Now, if you create it, you don't have to keep it on a laptop, yeah, right? You have to post it on LinkedIn and tag Uber, or maybe tag such companies, right? And it's not every day, but there are cases where sometimes if any person from them team notices it, you could actually get a golden ticket, and maybe an interview, or maybe a coffee chat with some of their product leaders, right? So the idea is to not just
That's cool. Yeah.
yeah, like the idea is not just to work or study, but the idea is to also showcase it so that they know that you are working on it, right? I think that's one of the biggest takeaways from this journey as well.
Wow. Awesome. So you mentioned you were doing with that cohort, you were doing product teardowns. You also said that you were doing mock interviews. I guess I'm trying to kind of put myself in your shoes here. I have some technical background trying to break into product. Maybe you read what is that book? Sorry, I'm blanking on the name, but I know the book here.
Cracking the PM interview.
There you go. Okay, yeah, there you go. So you've read that. Yeah, so you've read that and you've done like your kind of basic groundwork, kind of fundamental skill building here. Any other call outs that come to mind? Maybe any resources that you leverage that were especially helpful? Any YouTube channels or
Okay.
anything else?
So, another controversial thing which I want to just say is that I hated that book. By the way, reading the PM interview,
Okay.
I started reading it, and it was very theoretical, honestly, for a beginner like me. And I was more interested in to practice than just read. So I personally couldn't complete that book. But yeah, I think apart from that, I think I read a lot of articles. For example, a lot of articles by you know by YC has a lot of articles on entrepreneurship. Then apart from that, uh, I also read a lot of these articles on. So Paul Graham, the founder of IC, he has his own website, right? And there are a lot of uh, articles around product management, mental models. A16Z has articles around product market fit as well. So I read these bunch of articles, and uh, actually, the good thing is that I have actually compiled a number of them on a document. So I would
Oh,
love
wow.
to share it
Yeah, and
with
I can PR in the show notes. Yeah, so that anybody can access. That's wonderful. Thanks for doing that. Really appreciate.
yeah. So I think if you could just see my screen, there are a lot of these, you know, articles about mental models, post principles. So I think just reading about them helps you get into the mindset of a product manager, because you want to become a product manager in your head much before you actually do on the job description or the role.
Any tips in terms of best practices on how to do that or coffee chats?
Yeah, yeah. I think so. The one of the things you definitely want to understand is that the hiring managers are normally people who are director of products, senior product managers, right? All these top product leaders. So
Hmm.
uh, so you definitely want to approach them, but also do not forget that there are a lot of these APMs and PM1s and PM2s who are actually easier to approach, and they are more likely to give you their 15 minutes or 20 minutes, right? Because they are the also ones who are more active on LinkedIn rather than like a 45, 50-year-old product leader who already has so many things on his plate that he might not even check his LinkedIn DMs. So I think initially, don't try to just go and DM the CEO of Netflix or the CPO of Netflix to just get on a coffee chat. Just try to take all the balls which are easy to grab up across the tree, and just try to DM and message all the people around you who you think could be your alumni, could be all these people working in these good companies. And the way you do is you firstly try to keep your message very short. I think I get messaged a lot, and one of the main problems behind that I do not reply to probably is also because the messages itself is so long, and honestly, in today's world, you do not have the time and attention span also maybe to read that and sit across. So,
Yeah.
so just it should be, I think, effectively around 3 lines. Right, the first line should be like a brief intro about yourself. That I'm currently maybe pursuing masters in XYZ, and maybe the second line should be more about what how you stand out, right? For me, it was I have previously worked as an AI engineer at Intel and other companies, right? And the third line probably should be like a call to action, or maybe something which establishes a connection. For example, I really admire the products made at Uber, blah blah blah, and I would love to get on a 20-minute coffee chat with you as and learn from your experience. So I think keeping it in very short and sweet, uh, and trying to message as many people as possible, because that's the game, right? It's not customization. It's actually the scale. So if you,
Mm.
I remember I sent 3,000 connection requests, and only 1,000 actually accepted, and and I could only get 60 people on a coffee chat with me, and I
Interesting.
could get my resume reviewed with only 30 people out of the 60 people, and I then ended up changing my resume 15 times, and that's how I started
Okay.
landing interviews. So the number from like
1%.
3,000.
Yeah, 1% conversion rate to resume review. I think the more notable statistic there for me is that you had a 33% connection request accepting rate. I feel like that's pretty good, man. Like just from my experience, 1 in 3 is pretty solid. I think those are all very actionable, very helpful tips. With that stage set now, I think we're ready to jump into the meat and bones of the matter, which is that, first of all, how is AIPM different from general PM stuff? So that's what we've been talking about this whole time, right? Now, can you help break down for us how AIPM specific roles are different from general product management?
Sure. So I think when I came into this world of product management, I noticed that there are different kind of product management, right? Product managers rather. So firstly, it's the business product managers, right? Who are completely more into the business thing. They don't really focus on the technical side of things, and those are the roles for which you will get the least amount of sponsorship, because as an immigrant, you are somehow expected to be technical in this country, and perhaps
Understand. Yeah.
perhaps in the future as well, it's better to be on that side.
As
So moving to the technical side right now, when back in 2023, when I started, ChatGPT was just launched like 6 months. So 2022 October and November, ChatGPT is launched, and 2023 March or April, I started my journey into product management, effectively by understanding and reading. So what I so there were not many AI product manager roles or AI product managers that time. It was more
mm,
technical product managers, right? People who actually probably deal with the DevOps team. Today they deal with MLOps. The people who
mm,
used to deal more with ensuring that that the engagement on the product is constant and going high. Whereas today they're dealing more on working with the AI scientists and ensuring that the models actually are more accurate. So there has been a drastic change over these 2 years, right? So I think so within technical product management also, I think there is a layer of non AIPM and technical product managers and AI product managers, right? So the non AI product like technical product managers are the ones, as I described. They do not work with AI engineers or AI researchers. They just work with the software engineers, right?
mm.
And they do not deal with AI products. And I feel in 2025 that has already gone much reduced a lot, and AI product managers and requirement is much higher, right? Now coming to AI product management, right? It's what I have noticed is that a lot of people have been constantly asking me about how to get into AI product management without having any AI experience. And unfortunately, if you do not have a technically experience, or if you do not have any a solid experience around machine learning or building models, it's very difficult to get into AI product management, because it
Right.
straight requires you to work with AI research scientists, and if you yourself do not have any experience over it, it might be very difficult for you to understand the AI scientist side, because uh,
Mm.
a lot of AI is actually research as well. So it
Yes.
takes a lot of time. It takes different layers within the model. There are different metrics for for an AI product as opposed to a common software product. So
Yeah.
the idea of having some technical knowledge, having some of your own projects, even if you haven't worked previously as an AI engineer, actually helps a lot to get into that world of AI product management.
So I guess the thing that's now throwing me a little bit is what if so you had like full blown work experience when it came to this stuff. What if somebody doesn't have that but instead has maybe in their, passive time has done a few courses, has built some projects around machine learning. Is kind of a self-learned person that has kind of taught themselves machine learning while also coming from, let's just say, like a computer science background, etc. I guess my question is, can you supplement the lack of work experience directly in machine learning with just self-taught expertise in machine learning?
I think definitely, because I think for most part I was a self-taught ML engineer, because none of my professors ever really like took
Oh yeah,
or
that's
taught
actually true.
ML.
Yeah, you were working
So
with labs directly. Yeah. Mm.
exactly. So I actually reached out to them myself. But I think if you're an undergrad, for example, right, I get a lot of messages from them as well, where I'm an undergrad and
Uh,
I want to get into AI product management, right? My suggestion to them is that, I really appreciate that you do want to get into that, but before you jump into that, right, it's much better to uh, you know uh, do some projects, as you mentioned, right? If you have self-taught yourself, have done projects, it's best to actually take some internships or take some industry-based projects. There's a lot of courses in US universities where they are like capstone courses with the companies themselves. So if you do them, I think and have built a strong technical background, that now has a much bigger edge for you than just some GitHub projects, because at the end of the day, it's all about competition. And when you compete with someone who has 1 or 2 years of experience parallelly, you should be able to show some solid stuff and solid evidence that you yourself have worked. And by just working on some projects online, it's not a very great way to stay ahead of the curve if you want to work as an AIPM. So I think AI also work experience always helps a lot, but yeah, it's definitely not 100% necessary. You can always do use internships, co-ops, and projects which are largely available in US and now even starting to be available in India.
Hmm. I see. Well, I mean, I feel like that will come as a kind of a, you know, bad news to maybe a lot of our listeners here, but I appreciate you saying it as it is. Do AIPM roles also have behavioral interviews? Actually, can you just walk us through your experience with the whole job application process itself when you were applying after your masters? What was that like, and what were some of the biggest learnings that came from?
Yeah. I think one of the biggest highlights was that if anyone is watching it, like you, or if they haven't reached the US and they've probably gotten an admit already this year, right? The idea is to start before going to the US for a master's. So start before even day one of masters, because I think a lot of problems I see around when I mentor students today is that they are very, very late. For example, I started mock interviews much before coming to the US, and I started refining my resume also before that. Right. So that just help me like give a lot of head start, because honestly, I know that once you come to the US, there are like the entire course structure is so different, the entire environment is so different. It takes a while to settle down, right? But overall, I think obviously we spoke about resume review, right? I think networking is something which is often spoken a lot about, right? It's like but it still is ambiguous, right? Because there's so many like tons of ways to do networking, right? And I think broadly from experience, I think there are two versions of networking which you can do. One is warm networking. By warm networking, what I mean is uh, if you have time, for example, if it's a 3 or 4 semester course, and if you still have 2 semesters before you start your internship, that means you have some more time than people who have a 1 year course, right? Where you have to immediately do an internship as soon as you, start your masters and get started on that journey. If you are in the former scenario, inviting people for coffee chats, right, helping build that warm connection between you. So whenever there is an opportunity later, so that it's easier to get a referral from them. It's easier to, what if they're the hiring manager? It's easier to get an interview directly with them. So that is the warm version, which everyone kind of knows. Honestly, it's not really a big deal. Then there is a cold version of networking. Uh, and in that, the only one we are aware of is referrals. Now, another controversial take is referrals are overrated, highly overrated. I personally, out of 16 interviews, only received one interview due to referral. And the problem is that today everyone has a referral. And I have spoken with recruiters also, and the recruiters are also agreeing to the fact that because everyone or mostly everyone has a referral, right? It's not something which helps you stand out of the edge unless and until the referral is coming from a very senior person, or the referral is coming from hiring manager. So uh, a lot of times when I have waited for someone to refer me, and during that time, the posting has already been shut or closed. So I think the idea is to not wait for referrals, right? Try to apply ASAP. Now, in cold networking, people mostly only know referrals. 99% people do not know something called post application networking. Right? What is
Right.
post application networking? For example, I applied to Uber as for a product management internship. Now I haven't gotten a referral. I have just done a cold application, right? Straight out cold application. But I also want to get my application noticed. So the best way is to try to reach out to the recruiter, try to reach to the hiring manager, right? And try to just write in the same 3-line format, right? Of
Yep.
why you think you are a fit, and ending with a line of, would it be possible if you could review my resume or application, right? Now, the I landed my dream role because of such a mail being sent to my recruiter.
Huh.
So
Wow.
that was actually a game changer for me. And I'm doing this mentorship cohort this year, and I'm seeing that it's acting as a game changer for my students as well. So post application networking is the biggest weapon you can use
Wow.
in networking, because it's not always possible to get a referral, right? But it's definitely possible to send an email, send a message to the person in power to review your resume, right? I know people from Apple, I know other people who have gotten interviews just because of this. So this is one thing. In networking, I would highly suggest moving to mock interviews. Right now,
Yeah.
mock interviews is people do networking, right? So everyone has a resume. Some people do networking, but none of them actually do mock interviews before getting the interview, right? So everyone
Correct.
starts mock interviews once they get a email from the recruiter saying that, hey, you're shortlisted. But the problem in that is you get maximum 1 or 2 weeks to prepare for the interview.
If even,
And
yeah, probably not even that usually.
exactly. And the problem is the more you delay, the more advantage you're giving to your competitors, because the earlier you interview, it's better for them. It's better for you actually. So I think what I started was I started mock interviewing much before I came to the US. And in total, I completed around 105 mock interviews by the end of my journey across those 2 semesters. And
Wow.
and that actually helped me completely transform my technical mindset to more technical product mindset. Right now, that's 105
That's
mock
good.
interviews one way. So I took 105 mock interviews and I gave 105 mock interviews. So totally, I sat in more than 200 mock interviews through my 2 semesters journey. So it took about a year, right? Now, uh, whenever I used to get an interview, I used to already be prepared up to a very good level. And I had to just do few more mocks to be very customized to that company's
Exactly.
job position, right? That company's style of interviewing. And that is something which is lacking a lot. And I do not blame the students, but the entire interview structure of product management is so unstructured and scattered, right? And it is not really well informed. So I have
Mm.
actually created a lot of these resource documents, and just for this podcast, I have created 1 or 2 documents which I actually haven't even released publicly.
Oh, let's
So love to share with
and
you guys. And I think the biggest weapon I I would say is practice. And people then ask, how do you practice? How do you find people? How do you find those 100, 200 people? I think there is this one community which can be game changing, which is called Lewis Lynn's community. Uh, and he is also a person who was the bestseller for product manager. So he has this book called Decode and Conquer, which is parallel to the Cracking the PM interview. Uh,
Mhm.
so he has this entire community where senior product managers at Microsoft are effectively doing mock interview with you. Uh, uh, and uh, and that's a great advantage, right? You're not just mock
Like,
interviewing, you're networking with such a senior person,
yeah,
right? So
yeah.
I think
What was his name? Can you spell out his name for anybody that's just listening and isn't watching? Yeah.
sure, I'll just actually show it rather than
Perfect.
spell it.
Yeah.
If you see this,
Okay, Lucy Lynn. I see. Gotcha.
yeah, and and he has all these channels. So if you see, all these people are requesting, for example, Divyanshi has Google APM interview next week, right? And similarly, there are so many people, this person has a mock interview for PM role at T-Mobile, right? No, so I mean, just see, right? I'm a PM with 10 years of experience, ex Adobe, right? I mean, just the kind of diverse people who are here to practice and network with, right? Those that
And
is
is this
insane.
free? This feels like it should not be free.
Exactly, completely free, like completely free. Just requires your
Crazy.
time and efforts. Yeah. And I mean, this guy is a principal PM with 8+ years of experience, and he's interviewing at Amazon. Now, wouldn't you like to, just get an opportunity to just chat with him and talk about his experience? And he's allowing you to mock
Yeah.
interview him. Interestingly, a lot of people I actually met, I we kind of became friends, and they're all in great companies like Meta, TikTok, because we all practice our way out each other to get roles. So amazing community, the best resource out there for product managers, and definitely it's there in my deck as well. There are the YouTube channels on, uh, for example, Exponent is a great YouTube channel which you can feel before
Yeah.
going into that. So there are all these links in my resource document. So probably in the description, Naman will hopefully be sharing them, and then you can access it.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely, man. That's such a great call out. I will say I had a very brief brush with a TPM role at Google back in the day, which I completely bombed. No surprises. Didn't even know where to start preparing. My entire preparation was just watching like YouTube videos for a week, which feels just, you know, not very smart in hindsight. But I remember a question that I was asked that I would love to get your, like, if we can do like a very quick, semi brief mini mock interview here. And it still stumps me because there's so many different ways to answer this. And I feel like you would be a good one to ask. But the question really was as simple as how would you explain primary key in SQL to a 5-year-old? Like that was the question. But my whole point of bringing this up was to, just give a flavor to anybody listening that you can prepare so much and like just endlessly, and this is just such a nebulous that's what makes it so exciting and so interesting, right? Like you just have to think in ways that you have never thought of before. I'm sure even with your preparation of, as you said, like almost more than 200 mock interviews, maybe for the job that you have currently, you in that interview you were asked something that you had never. I'm sure that happened, right? And so I think that's the point you were trying to make, is that the more you increase your practice surface area, the higher your chances of being able to come up with something tangible that you can say at one of these. So that definitely rings true for sure.
Yeah, because once you do like 50 mock interviews, on the 51st or on the 52nd, now you already have a very good enough corpus. So now next time whenever you're asked a question, be it in behavioral, especially where you can be asked literally anything and anything, like any kind of question, or be it product design, be it execution, be it any kind of interview, your brain automatically start making connections between the first 50 interviews, and they'll try to cook something up which often will be the right answer. Because I personally, as you rightly guessed there, in my final, so I had totally of 4 interviews with for my current role, and that was for the internship. Actually, that was not even for full time role because they converted me. And for an internship, having 4 interviews is much more rare, because for an internship it's mostly 2 interviews. And and as you mentioned, the first was behavioral, uh, right? And in behavioral, now the thing about behavioral is, right, if the recruiter has very few seats for the next interview, she will grill you as hard as possible. So it will not be cakewalk. But if there are a lot of openings even after that, she will likely pass you. So it's not one of those interviews to take lightly, right? I think I estimated behavioral and overestimated product design, because I used to just practice initially 50 marks for product design, and then I got in leader interview, and then I got other companies, and they were all behavioral for some reason. And then I actually changed my strategy, did a lot of behavioral, right? And that's how it helped me. My second round was more product design focused, which was a quick 30-minute round where I was interviewed by a director of product, and she asked very randomly, "How do you design a product?" and give examples. And there she kind of grilled me about the examples I gave, and they were looking for a technical and data-led AI product person. So she talked. She asked me a lot of questions around communicating technical requirements to the engineers, etc., etc. And because it was a 30-minute interview, you had to move quick because normally the interviews in product design are 45 minutes in Meta in a lot of these companies. But a 30-minute interview is very tricky because you want to meet the interview's expectation. Also, not you don't want to waste much time at the same possible time. And
Yeah.
my third interview was more like a resume round, but on a past experience round, which was pretty good. But my fourth interview was with the actual hiring manager. And that was like full on entrepreneurial, where they were
Really?
asking me to create a competitor LinkedIn. He was he actually gave me a random like a product backlog list to me and asked me to prioritize it, right? So it was like very, very hands on and nothing. I had literally nothing. I had not practiced any of these questions before, given those 200 plus mock interviews. So but yeah, I think definitely it did help in the
That's so interesting. I want to quickly double click on the product design thing that you mentioned. So, what exactly is so? Can you go over exactly maybe like a template question that one can expect
Sure.
around that? What exactly
Sure.
are you designing? Yeah.
Well, I think there are two kinds of product design questions which you can expect. One is design an alarm clock for blind type of question, which is basically design anything from scratch. Design a language learning app as a Facebook PM. So this is more like design from scratch. Then the second type of interview question is improve Instagram, improve Slack, improve Instagram. So there are either it's design or either it's improve. The third question, which is also asked sometimes, is talking about your favorite product. So,
Mm. That I have.
and that,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that is something which is also product design, and people just sometimes take it very lightly. It's not about, that the app is just having cool UI UX. You have to actually go in depth and talk a lot more from product design, specifically. I think that's where that third type of question could be either be taken as a behavioral sometimes, or either could be taken as a design. So these are the two or three types of product design interviews, and
That's
all of them have actually the same template, uh, which I have also mentioned in my decks, and it is also
perfect.
pretty similarly answered actually.
That's really helpful. And then, really, the last thing before I let you go here, in terms of behavioral interviews, the my understanding of it is that the best way to prepare while also not looking like a complete robot is to have like mini bullets for various situations all ready and compiled, and then based on whatever you get, kind of picking and choosing as components the little bullets that you had to then combine them and come up with whatever was asked. So like you would have one or two bullets for difficult times or difficult situations with your past experience, one or two bullets for dealing with a non-communicative boss, maybe one or two bullets for when you did something that you shouldn't have and had a learning. And then say when you're asked, what was the time when, blah, blah, blah. And then you're able to, okay, I have that. So let's mesh A, B, and R together to give you the answer. First of all, is that something you heard? And second of all, what do you feel about that approach? And if you don't feel as strongly, what is an approach that you recommend?
Yeah, I think it's similar to that. I think where you would have heard of the star concept, right? The star format of yeah. So we
Situation, task, action, result.
yeah, perfect, perfect. So I think you effectively create those bullets or those stories much before beforehand. Now the problem is that for technical folks who are transitioning to product management, it's not really. it's not really easy to have very product like stories, right? Because you have worked as an ML engineer for an entire career so far, and you obviously your stories will be very technical, right? So apart from the resume spinning off, which we talked earlier in our conversation, this is another very important spilling off where where you need to sell to the recruiter or the hiring manager that whatever work you did was not just helping the engineering or the AI team, it was actually impacting the product team as well in your company. For example, if you actually created this AI model for summarizing Jira tickets, just a small example, how did that ultimately help improve the product manager's efficiency, right? So you have to become product manager within those star questions as well, and that's where I actually you have to unlock creativity there, because that's what I did. Even though I was an AI engineer at Intel, if I would have communicated those stories during my interviews, I would have most likely not gotten through it,
Exactly.
because my mindset then would have still been in the technical side when now it required to be more in the technical and business side.
Business.
So
Interesting.
I think that's where the star stories, as you mentioned, are very, very important to do and to be able to actually be prepared for those 30, 40 questions uh, is very difficult. Sounds difficult, but actually very helpful. And the problem with these is you can get n number of questions, right? And some of them would be so difficult that it will be even after doing mock interviews, you won't have an answer to them. So it's better to practice a lot. One final takeaway or trick which I would like to just mention on your platform is that try to read the body language of the interviewer, because
I
that
love
is
that.
very critical.
Yeah.
Because what happens is that you're coming with 100 mock interviews, 200 mock interviews. You don't want to be a machine after that.
Yeah.
You don't want to be Chatur from Three Idiots. You want to be very smart. You want to understand from their expressions, their face expressions, try to understand whether they prefer shorter answers or longer answers, right? That in the first couple of questions, you'll get a sense. If their mouth is opening a lot initially when you're speaking, that means they expect shorter answers. If they are not, they're actually happy with the longer answers you're currently at giving, and then try to adapt, because that is a very that is a trick which is required to ace, because every interviewer is different. And you have to quickly adapt whether you like it.
That's a wonderful call out, and it's funny you mentioned that because I have just in a little silo here been working on a solo cast episode where it'll just be me, and I'll be talking about how to interview really, which is I know it sounds very meta because what does that mean? What do you mean how to interview? But basically, what you're going over was one of my core pillars where it is at the end of the day, and something which is very easy to forget, especially due to the pressure and the circumstances, that other person is nervous too. Because think about it. Of course, you're nervous, you want the job, but this is not something that's a cakewalk for the other person either. So, a lot of times, a good interview experience boils down to how comfortable you can make the interviewer feel. This has been so much fun, man. Yeah, I really want to thank you for taking the time today for, not really not just today for talking to us about this stuff, but I know you're so active on LinkedIn. And yeah, so really honestly, anybody listening, I'm assuming if you got till here, you're interested in this stuff, go follow Aman. He will add value to your LinkedIn feed every single day. I can vouch for that. And yeah, really appreciate you taking the time. Thanks so much, man. This was such a blast.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting. I think you are doing a great job. I wish you all the best for your future podcast, and happy to do another part in this if possible.
Yeah, man, absolutely. That brings us to the end of that episode with Aman. I hope you enjoyed as much as I did and are starting to prepare for your next AI product manager role if you're interested in this field. If you would like to support me, the easiest way to do that is by subscribing to me on YouTube and leaving me up to a 5-star rating on Spotify or your favorite podcast apps. If you go out and tell all of your friends about what an incredible podcast this is, that also goes a long way in addition to commenting below any feedback or guest suggestions that you may have for me. Catch you all in the next one. New episodes every Wednesday.